All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to the In the Woods podcast for Woodland Church. My name is Pete, and I am here with our youth pastor, Mason, who oversees 6th grade through young adults. And this week, Mason is joining me because, as most people who watch this podcast know, Woodland Church is a multi-site church. We have 2 locations. And going back to our first episode last month, Pastor Devin primarily leads there, but we have rotating speakers, and you had a chance to share at Marshall this week. So I thought it'd be great to have you on and also get to know you a little bit. So welcome, Mason, to the the Woodland podcast.
Yeah, no, it's so good to be here. I mean, thanks for the opportunity. It was a joy to be out at Marshall, and just a good time being with our Marshall campus, and excited to just chat about this idea of setting our minds on things above. Yeah. Where Christ is. So
we should also set our minds on making sure you're closer to the microphone.
Let's do that. Let's make sure that that's good.
Hey, a couple housekeeping things I want to keep up on just as we're moving forward. First, there's been a lot of questions as we've kind of gotten this podcast going. We sort of started primarily on YouTube, but it was always the intention to be a traditional podcast. So if you are someone who is like, hey, I don't really sit and watch video a lot, do you have audio? This podcast is available on all of the primary Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those kind of things. If you just want to find the audio and listen to us in your car or something, or while you're working, go to any of whatever podcast you use, search In the Woods, Woodland Church, and you'll find us. Keep in mind, if you search Woodland Church Podcast, you'll actually find a different feed that has all of our messages. So if you just want to if you're driving to work and want to listen to Mason's message from on Sunday, go to the Woodland Church Podcast. If you're looking for this podcast of more of our discussions afterwards, it's called In the Woods, Woodland Church. So both are available on audio. And just a little housekeeping. Also, as we always say, if you have questions, send them in. We'd love to hear them. Got a couple that are available we want to talk about. One of them was about the audio. Also had some questions one came in about prayer, which is actually the last week of our series in a couple of weeks. So we're going to hit on that actually from the stage. But other questions you have, other things you want to talk about, please send them in, let us know, and we'd love to be engaging and interacting with you guys together. So, Mason, let's start at the beginning. What year were you born?
Oh my goodness, way back.
I do want to know, for people that don't know who you are, haven't met you, so how long have you been at Woodland?
Yeah.
First to start.
No, absolutely. It's just about 2 years. So I came here August of 2023, right at the beginning of August. And I kind of right into the interim period as we were prayerfully discerning who the next lead pastor would be for Woodland Church. And lo and behold, here you are. And that's been a fun and at times grueling, process. But it has really, I think, for the entire staff, it's been a process of just wholeheartedly learning to lean upon Jesus and trust in Him and His will. And so,
well, the good thing about that, the good thing is, having been such a grueling process is good preparation, because most of the people who have ever worked for me would describe it as grueling. So
perfect.
Get ready.
More of the same, I suppose, So no, it's been a joy to get to know you and work with you so far. So
tell us a little bit about your call it your faith journey. Totally. How did you connect with Jesus? At what point in your life did you grow up in it? Were you born in a home that followed Jesus, or did it come later? What did it look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Holland, Michigan, on the west side of Michigan, and I think I grew up kind of in the Reformed tradition. And so I had parents who were not incredibly serious or devout in their Christianity. We were kind of maybe once or twice a month attendees at our church, and I think that would kind of inform a lot of my ministry calling going forward. But kind of had a heart strangely warmed experience in 8th grade, listening to one of the last sermons of one of my pastors there. And from that point on, I made a profession of faith and just kind of had this relationship with God where I was so incredibly passionate and in love with this God. But from my high school and young adult years would struggle with obedience, would struggle with loving Him wholeheartedly and living a life of serious discipleship. And so this would kind of all come to a place where right after college, I took a trip to Israel, and I knew that there was going to be an opportunity to be baptized. And so I kind of went there with the intention of like, this is my moment where I'm going to give everything over to God.
This was the end of college.
Right at the end of college.
But you went, take a step back. You went to college to study to be a youth pastor.
I did.
So
that's right.
You weren't fully committed, but you decided to be a youth pastor?
I definitely was committed to Christ.
It was the money.
But yeah. Definitely was committed to Christ. I think the thing that Christ continued to reveal to me was that there was more and more of my heart that could be given over to him. And so, he was not just asking for 50% of my life, not just asking for 90% of my life, but he was asking for everything. As you mentioned, Jesus is supreme. And so kind of like getting the opportunity to be baptized in the Jordan River in Israel was a moment for me to give everything over to God, completely in a kind of a true, I guess, Wesleyan, second work of grace, just everything over to him. And so that was that from that point on, like God blessed and just empowered me with so much more freedom and peace and life that I just did not know was even possible. And so I think from there, he also just sent me into a life and a calling to ministry. So I would go on to kind of pursue a Master's of Divinity and pursue ordination in the Wesleyan Church, which I am now ordained. And so from then on, it's just been about like trying to listen to the voice of the Lord and obey where he leads. And so
you're in high school.
Yeah.
You have this sort of like, I believe this, I want this.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not 100% committed in my actions. At what point and why did your brain say, I want to go study to be a youth pastor?
Yeah.
Because you chose that going to college.
Exactly.
And
So
you went to Hope College.
I did.
In Michigan.
Yeah.
I also played football there, right?
I did. Yeah. Hope College was a blast. It was a great time. Definitely, enjoyed my time there. I think somewhere along the way, I realized I wanted to give back to students. I wanted to give back to people the way that youth pastors and mentors had given to me and poured into me. And so I wanted to just give back. And I think I just had grown so much from learning from others in a way that I wasn't really growing and learning from my parents. I didn't have that in my household to learn from. So I was always just relying on other people to kind of learn more about Christ. And so just so inspired by the youth pastors and mentors that have trained me and poured into me, and just wanted to kind of, I guess, give back. And God just continued to be faithful and patient with me in that process, I suppose.
Did you pick Hope because of ministry or because of football?
Yes. I think at that point in my life as a high school senior, I was looking to like pursue exercise science, which is crazy enough to say, and pursue a degree in youth ministry, but then also play football. And at that point in time, there wasn't a whole lot of institutions that were doing that sort of a thing. And so I went to Hope and enjoyed my time there. And I think it was definitely a big piece of where it led me today. And I think part of just what I learned in that high school and college journey is like, I love one of Dallas Willard's statements where, he just says like, so much has been said about the cost of discipleship. Like we talk about like what we have to give over to Christ, everything, of course, but not enough has been said about the cost of non-discipleship. In other words, we lose out on the abundance of life that Jesus Christ offers. We lose out on his joy, his peace, his life that he's giving to us day after day. And so I think that is kind of what I learned in this process of high school and college, where I had faith in Jesus. I believed that he was my Savior, but I wasn't giving over everything to him. I think it was a process of me learning, there's more. There's more here. There's more on the table that's being offered. And so I feel like that's what I kind of learned and where God took me in that process.
I think a lot of people will probably resonate and share that journey.
Yeah.
At what point did you meet Hannah?
Yeah. Early on. So she doesn't remember this, but I remember meeting her in 5th grade.
Oh,
on
wow.
the swing set.
Okay.
And so, and at that point, I knew, Pete.
So literally early on.
I knew she was the one. No, but so yeah, we met. You know, we went to the same school in fifth grade, and then from then on, you know, we were kind of friends, acquaintances. But we started dating my junior year in high school, and kind of the rest is history. We got married in October of 2019, and we've been married for 5 years.
Did she go to Hope with you?
She did not.
Okay.
So she went to Indiana Wesleyan.
She did the long distance thing for a few years.
Yeah, we did do the long distance thing for a few years, and that was its own journey. And she had a great time. She's studied to become a teacher. She had a double major in elementary and special ed, and now she's doing what she loves. So.
And you just brought new life into the world.
We did, yeah. We just welcomed our firstborn, Isaiah Jude Rosado, in May, and he's been a true gift. It's been so fun to be with him and just, have all that newborn time and also the lack of sleep. Nobody warns you about how much sleep you are going to lose. I feel like people tried to tell me, but the exhaustion is beyond comparison, Pete. It's something different. But we're getting in the rhythms. We're figuring it out. So I trust that it'll all smooth out soon enough, at least.
Don't miss that at all. My kids
no joke.
are older and sleep all the time. Actually, even when my kids were little, let's be honest, my wife was usually the one getting up. But it would wake me up.
Yeah.
When they're super little, it's like, what am I going to do? Like, I can't, I guess I could do a bottle, but for the most part, she's the one that was having to feed. So that's my excuse for my laziness. I tell myself those things.
I know. I can resonate with that as well. But
how many times
it's a learning process
in just these first month or so have you woken up to the sound of a baby crying and you just laid there and didn't move, hoping that your wife wouldn't know you're awake? Just admit it.
Yeah. Oh, there's a couple of rough stories about this one. Yeah. There was one time where it's like she knew it was my shift to take care of him, and he started crying, and she asked me, she's like, Mason, are you gonna wake up or are you sleeping? And so I thought
if I don't respond,
I thought that I was gonna tell her what I was actually doing so that I can move to actually taking care of the baby, and so I said I was sleeping. And so she was not happy with that answer. And it was not a good night for Mason. But I think we've learned. We've gotten into our rhythms and routines, and we're settling in. So it's been good. Yeah.
Well, congratulations, man.
I appreciate
it's exciting and appreciate hearing more of your story. And so you got out of college and immediately got into youth ministry? Did you have another job for a while, or did you just jump right in?
Yeah, so the first year out of college, I was a resident, as they say. I was kind of a glorified intern at a church in Holland called Central Wesleyan, and worked with the spiritual formation department, but also did a lot of stuff with youth ministry. And so did that for a year. At that time, kind of applied for the MDiv at Wesley Seminary, and then after that year was up, we moved to Indiana together. Hannah and I did. She already had a job out of college and got married. So it was there where we kind of just built a foundation for our marriage and learned what it was like to live together and be in part-time youth ministry and be a teacher and the whole 9 yards. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you're 6 years now, full-time ministry, or at least some form of ministry?
Yeah, just
right
about.
There.
Yeah. That's about right.
What would you say is the part that you just love the most and you get the most energy and fuel out of doing this?
Oh, man. Yeah. Just, I think being with the people in conversations like this. I think being with people in the one-on-one capacity where we can talk about Jesus, where we can actually learn how to follow him better, to pray for one another, and to just have that kind of each one reach one, each one teach one kind of method. I think that gives me the most life because I can see both in a week-to-week kind of basis, but over the long span of time, like how somebody's growing, how somebody's becoming closer to Christ, and how somebody's experiencing just fullness in him. So that's always fun for me. But it can be some of the most heartbreaking times too. I won't, even minimize that. But yeah, it is very life-giving to have those conversations.
What's something about being a youth pastor that you wish you could go back 2019 and tell yourself you were about to get into that you didn't know or weren't ready for?
Oh my gosh, what a question. So much cleanup. Cleanup.
Empty pizza boxes everywhere.
Cleanup. It's just like you're constantly cleaning the youth center, the spaces that you're in, the pizza boxes, as you mentioned, and just after the students. You can almost wish that they were a little bit more cleanly, but turns out that middle schoolers and high schoolers just, aren't
Go
that
figure.
way. Yeah.
That's true. And comparatively to other churches, even churches of our population size, you have a lot of space. There are a lot of physical space. Yeah. I mean, the youth building here is large, and you got a gym and a lot of places for students to throw garbage.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
Our youth pastor back in San Diego, where I came from, our youth building, we didn't have a youth building, we had a youth room. It was 21 feet wide and like 50 feet deep. So it was kind of like a thin, narrow, almost think of like a cell phone. And the stage was in front of the door. So to come in, you'd walk on the stage and walk down. And I'm pretty sure that if he got here and looked at our youth building, he would want to punch you in the face. But so he doesn't have as much space to clean up, but he doesn't have the advantage of just being able to do so many things, be so flexible and like.
For sure.
Yeah, we're really blessed with space here. It's cool.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I wanted people to get to know who you were and your story, and along with being a youth pastor, you're also part of the teaching team here. So you were at Marshall this week. You're filling in for me here at Battle Creek in 2 weeks. So you're getting 2 shots at Colossians of the 6-week series. This week, for those of you that hopefully have had a chance to listen to one of us before jumping on the podcast, we are started in chapter 3. This is the 4th week of our series, where for the first couple weeks and looking at those first 2 chapters, Paul is sort of setting the stage. And then in chapter 3, he talks to us, hey, turn your eyes up to heaven, Christ, look at him. And then he gives us this kind of list of things we should put to death. And then next week we'll get into it continues on. And now these are the things that you should add to it. One of the interesting things about the dynamic that we have here at Woodland is the person speaking at Marshall is completely autonomous from the person speaking at Battle Creek, other than we're both talking about Colossians 3, 1 through 11.
Right.
There's a general oversight. I gave you kind of an outline of just like, hey, we're looking at talking about the big idea is Christ is our example, look to him to know. But where you take it and how you take it is completely up to you. Half of my message this week was about zombies.
Nice.
Which it just get like, if you were at Battle Creek, like, oh, so like, my gut feeling is you didn't mention zombies yesterday.
I did not. I mentioned the X-Men and Colossus. So I don't know if that came up in your sermon, but I would, nonetheless.
Let's do this. It's like, I'm curious, why did you mention the X-Men and Colossus, and how did that relate to the way that you took this passage? I want to hear, because a good portion of people weren't at Marshall, and it'd be interesting to hear that.
Totally. No, yeah. So it was just kind of an intro to the message. So Colossus, comes from the same word that we actually get for Colossae, the church in Colossae, which the word is just, colossal, or it means just big or significant or mighty. And so that is kind of one of the... And
Colossus is one of the X-Men.
Yes, and
we have some more aged, seasoned people listening to our podcast.
I asked how many people were into X-Men at Marshall, and there was about 1 in each service. So.
And Marshall is like a younger church demographic, so you tell me something.
I was a little bit shocked, but nonetheless, yes, Colossus is one of the X-Men, also kind of one of their foes at times. But yeah, and he just has this thing where he just turns his skin to metal, right? To just withstand the pressure, withstand heat, withstand, damage, whatever it is. And I just feel like in our modern day world, we can do that really easily with God. We can just turn our skin to metal against God, or we can turn our hearts to metal against him. We, throughout just any different thing, I talked a lot about just the way that busyness affects this, in our modern day lives, but really anything can distract us. And Paul gives his own list of things that can distract us. But, whether it's just the difficulties that we're going through, or just the busyness of life, it can be so easy to kind of shield ourselves off from God's presence or just from true Christian vulnerability and love. So that was part of what I talked about. And I think the main crux of the message is like, we don't really see Jesus as our example, like actively, practically in life. So we fail to live a life of Christian maturity is kind of where I settled for most of the message. And but yeah, where did zombies come in, and how'd you end up talking about zombies, Pete?
So I don't remember. I think I don't know where that came from. I think what I looked at when I was looking at this passage was, and it started in our staff meeting last week.
Yeah.
So we all meet together on Tuesdays, and something that I just kind of, I don't want to say it, I guess I bring with me as the way that I kind of function, I'm used to functioning, is kind of treating our staff meeting as kind of a glorified small group in some ways. I like that.
Yeah.
So I talk
that.
about things that are, we have business to get through, but sometimes I'll just like to be like, hey, this Sunday we're talking about this, and just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks and talk it through. And we were just talking in our staff meeting about, in some ways, just the tension we all face between our desires and our wants and our brain telling us other things, and what does that look like? And where it sort of landed for me was sometimes, and the connection here might be thin, but the Bible can just look like a book of rules. And for a lot of people, and even for me, like in my own journey, I think it was that. It was just like, this is the rules. This is the do's and do nots. And what I've found in my life, and I've found in leading other people, is that when you give people rules, I heard a great line once, and it was, rules without reasons leads to rebellion and rejection. And that probably was said in the 90s when everything had to start with the same letter. But nice. the idea being like, if you give me a rule, but you don't give me a good reason for it, I'm not going to follow it. And that's like, so we're talking about, like, there's the part of you that needs, your brain needs to understand, but also needs to be motivated. Like, both those things are needed. Like, I need to actually think this is actually worth doing. Yeah. And I need to understand why, like, both of those things have to be at play. And sometimes as people who've said yes to Jesus, we are handed this massive list of things we can't do, things we're supposed to do. And it can, number one, it can feel overwhelming. Like, that was even a question that had come in about chapter 3. Like, the list just feels overwhelming. I have to completely change my life. What are you asking me to do? And also, like, the way that we're wired as humans, our brain, like the chemistry of it is, if it doesn't make sense why you're telling me to do this, and I'm not motivated to do it, I'm not going to do it. And so I grew up in a church environment where it's like, okay, let me take a step back. Okay, if I know in my head that to get you to do something, you need to know about it in your brain and then want to do it, like head and heart, maybe call it that.
Yeah, totally.
You have to want to do it and you have to know it. There's different ways I can try to motivate you. Just the proverbial carrot and a stick. I can say, do this or you're going to hell, and hope that motivates you. Yeah. I can say, like, hey, do this and your life will be perfect. I don't know. Or I can just be like, hey, do this or God will be mad at you. There's all different ways I can try to find to motivate you, or we can actually try to find to motivate ourselves and tell our own stories. Yeah. And what I've found is none of those things motivate me well. I've met people who are motivated by the I don't want to go to hell thing. Yeah. But that even raises a whole other problem, because according to the scriptures, our eternity is not based on our performance. So that almost demotivates. Yeah. Because then I'm like, well, if it's not based on my performance, then I don't have to do it. Yeah. And like, who cares if I keep going on in sin? I don't, what's the motivation here? And so I've heard, like, well, the motivation is God is good. He deserves you to do well. Okay, so I'm living really hard because God deserves that. I don't. Why does he care? It's just that doesn't get me going. It's like asking me to go on a diet, but who cares? Is there a reason for it? But then it's like, hey, here's a trip for a free cruise for you and your spouse in 6 months, and you're going to be on the beach without your shirt on for 5 straight days. Holy smokes! I better lose some weight.
Time to kick into gear.
Yeah. So what is the motivation? What's the driving factor to put to death all of these things?
Mm-hmm.
And what I found is, and I think I see this in Paul's writings,
mm-hmm.
the motivation isn't to please God. That's sort of a sub-motivation for all of it. The motivation is, this isn't actually living.
Yeah.
Like, you're not experiencing life the way, like you just said, like you quoted the Dallas Willard thing. Like, we talk a lot about the cost, but we don't talk about the benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than saying this is a list of rules, I was like, what if we looked at it as symptoms of a disease that's killing you?
Mm-hmm.
And you're not putting to death the symptoms, you're putting to death the basic idea that's killing you, and you're choosing to rise to new life. And so I guess somewhere in there, it was just like, my brain went to zombies. Half
zombies.
Dead. I think it was like the half dead living thing of like,
totally.
What if we're actually, the life you're living is more like a half dead zombie, and there's something better for you out there? It
Mm-hmm.
changes the way you read a text, like put to death, lying, slander, greed, all this stuff. It's not giving you a list of do nots. It's saying, hey, put to death this zombie life that's actually a disease that's corrupting and killing you, and look to Jesus, who shows you what life could actually be like.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, just as you start to say those things, like some of the things that come to mind as well are just how relational not only Paul views his relationship with Christ, but just how relational this spiritual life is. And so, like, I think for Paul, there is just like this union that he's seeing with, I am becoming like Christ in his death. I'm becoming like Christ in his resurrection. And he even says in Colossians 3, as you've been raised, you've been seated at the right hand of God, with Christ. And so I think it's like for our listeners and for those people who are wrestling with, like, why do I have to do all of these things? What are these lists all about? Like, I think it is just, once you just get a taste of that relationship with Christ, once you just begin to taste and see the joy that is found in knowing Christ deeply, all of a sudden, like, things on earth just begin to grow strangely dim, as the hymn says. And I mentioned it, and that's the sermon on Sunday. Like, once we just see Jesus for who he really is in our lives, like, all these things just somehow just begin to get a lot less weighty, and they start to fall away.
What's funny about what you just said, I was driving to church on Sunday, thinking about my message, and I started singing. I started singing, "Turn your eyes upon Jesus."
Right.
And I was like, I wonder if I can have the band play that. That's it. Like, I turned my eyes to Jesus, and other things grow dim. And I think the challenge for us is, and I like to define analogies. A lot of times the exercise analogy has some overlap that I like.
Yeah.
It's interesting, when you start getting in shape, you start feeling the benefits of it, and it then becomes almost like, oh, I want to keep going.
Yeah.
The challenge is you have this huge hurdle in front of you of just getting going.
Mm-hmm.
And that is 99% of the barrier.
Yeah.
And I think there's something with the Christian walk that's similar. Once you get going, it's like, oh, this is great. There are benefits. And you mentioned that in our staff meeting. You made a comment that kind of stuck with me. And I'm going to butcher it. I'm not quoting you verbatim.
Yeah.
But the context was, we like to give people rules about Christianity, but we're not always great at showing them how good it is.
Right.
And how great it is to be in Christ.
We give them the whip often, like, oh, this is going to send you to hell. But we don't often give them the carrot, the boundless riches and wisdom and glory that's found in Christ, as Paul will talk about. And I think one of the guys that I've learned a lot from is a guy named Frank Laubach, and he was actually a missionary to the Philippines. And basically, like, one of his goals in his time there was he called it the game of minutes. And so, like, what he tried to do was to spend as many minutes as possible. Like, if this minute was spent giving my attention to Christ, it was a win. And if it was not, it was a loss. And so he was not marking every minute and kind of like as a win or loss, but he would reflect every hour or so, like how was the last hour? And
Every hour he would reflect.
Yeah, well, like, yeah, I mean, just periodically.
He must have been single.
Yeah, well, a missionary in, the Philippines had a pretty different lifestyle in the mid-50s, in the 1950s. But anyways, like, just the things that he said when he was writing about this experience were so shocking to me. It was like, this is without a doubt the hardest thing that I've ever done. And yet it has been the most invigorating, life-giving, glorious thing I could have ever experienced. And so it was like this double kind of, I guess difficulty, but also blessing, where it's like, man, our attention is so sacred, so holy, that when given over to Christ, man, it's just like glorious, beautiful, amazing. But it's also under so much attack, and honestly so difficult to just consistently and constantly give over to Christ.
Sure.
So I think once we just, like you said, once we start it, man, it starts to pick up momentum though, for sure.
A lot of this for me started honestly not with the Bible, but with a book I've been reading about, The Psychology of Change by Dan Heath. It's called Switch. Yeah. Great book. And he talks about he's not even a Christian book, but he talks about the nature of how our brains work. And one of the things he talks about is he has this phrase, I think it's called, like, the idea is like, where do you want to get? Where do you want to get to? Yeah. And I think in this case, Paul is saying, look up Jesus. Mm-hmm. If you look up to Jesus and you look at him and you just open the Gospel of Matthew and read about Jesus, you will feel a gap between yourself and him. A gap that feels just the Grand Canyon. I can't, I'm supposed to be like that. And he even says in Matthew 5, hey, be perfect. Like, thanks, Jesus.
Thank you for that.
Which we might get into that when we're going to do Matthew, I think this year. The idea of become like me. Mm-hmm. This is the end goal. And so it can feel like I could never do that. Mm-hmm. And in a sense, again, the analogy, it's like thinking to yourself, I just ran up the stairs and I can't breathe. I should get in shape. And your eyes go to an NFL linebacker.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I can't be that, so I'm not going to bother. Right.
You don't think so?
Right. I have one ab.
Yeah.
And it's not in that shape. So I'm not even going to try. And so the idea is like, rather than looking at that, perfect human specimen, it's more like, he calls it like shrinking the gap of saying, well, what can I do now to start walking towards that?
Right.
And they talked about this I don't know there's a woman who does like, she like has like a YouTube channel helping you like organize your life or something, kind of like a Marie Kondo kind of person.
Yeah.
And she has something called the 5-minute rule.
Nice.
And the idea is when you look at your house, the house is a train wreck. It's a huge mess. Mm-hmm. And it just keeps getting dirtier. Cleaning your house, I've heard with kids, is like brushing your teeth while eating Oreos.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it can feel so overwhelming. The gap is enormous. Mm-hmm. Like I could never be like Jesus. It's too much. And so her advice to people is set a 5-minute timer. Like on your phone, set a 5-minute timer,
right,
and start it and start cleaning. And when the 5-minute timer is up, you have permission to quit. Mm-hmm. And so your brain isn't saying to itself, I have to clean this massive house and all of its mess right now. Your brain says, I'm going to do this for 5 minutes. And what studies show is 9 times out of 10, the timer goes off and you keep cleaning.
Right.
Because you've started to feel the benefits of it. It started to become possible. You're in a rhythm.
The weight gets lighter.
Yeah. And you just suddenly, you're like, the movement forward has happened. And I think when we look up to heaven, like he says in verse 1 of chapter 3, and we see Jesus, and then he calls us to be like that and to put all this stuff to death. If I just have to be like, okay, tomorrow it's all dead, like it's just almost like I can't do that. But if I say, okay, what are some small steps I can take? And whether it's literally, like I was thinking about it, you could literally say, I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes a day to just pray or spend time in the Bible.
That's literally one of the things that I told them at the end of my message is like, just spend 5 minutes giving your undivided attention to Jesus a day and just see where it takes you.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is like so important because you just got to start somewhere. And even for these things that, like Paul will talk about, that we need to put to death or we need to rid ourselves of. If we're honest, like these things are incredibly common today. I mean, anger, malice,
it's part of the
rage,
human broken condition,
sexual immorality, like these just, things that are just so common. I think just simply starting somewhere with something, I think for me has been incredibly helpful. And so like John Mark Comer wrote a book a couple of years ago where it was called Live No Lies. And basically his whole claim was like, our problem is not that we tell lies, our problem is that we live by them. Right. And so, he kind of wrote about this guy named Evagrius of Ponticus, who basically...
That was going to be the name of my second child. But
isn't that like a really beautiful name? Come on, that's such a cool name.
Evagrius.
But anyways...
Evagrius, clean your room.
His book had an even cooler name, okay? So it was, he wrote a book, this guy, Evagrius, and it was called A Monastic Handbook for Combating Demons.
Oh, I've heard of
How
this.
cool is that, right? Yeah. And so like his whole claim was like, the enemy will often try to come and convince us that things like anger, rage, malice, greed, what have you, are worth it. That he'll try to get us to live by these lies that like, oh, so here's an example, like a lie might be, I need to have this new car in order to be, I don't know, successful or to happy, and basically Evagrius would kind of say like, okay, against the thought that I need a new car. And then he would go ahead and place the words of Jesus after that. Mm-hmm. And so like we could say, against the thought that I need this new car, oh, I remember the words of Jesus that says one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. And so like just beginning to start somewhere with something that we are struggling with or wrestling with or feeling stuck in, I think can be incredibly helpful in just the life of kind of putting off the things that are destructive to our relationship with Christ.
Sure. Yeah, I think he was, I forgot the name, but the demon handbook thing, I remember that. Yeah. Really what he was doing is just giving some practical steps to Paul's statement of taking every thought captive.
Exactly, yeah.
Of saying, this thought came in my brain and I take it captive. And I think where that ties into this passage of scripture and kind of lands the plane a bit, before Paul gives me a list of things not to do, he tells me to look to Jesus.
Correct.
If I don't look to Jesus first to see what is true, then all the other things are always going to feel like truth. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of going back to like my whole thing with zombies is like, if everyone around me is a zombie, that becomes truth. Mm-hmm. This is just living. We're all just eating each other's faces off. When I look to Jesus and I see truth, I'm now comparing it to the zombies and being like, oh, that's not life at all. So Paul says, when you have a thought, you grab it and you say, wait, is this zombie living or is this heaven living?
Right.
Like, is this the truth that Jesus tells me or is this something that the brokenness around me is telling me? Paul even says, and I quoted this passage in my message, like, we rejected knowledge of God and our thinking has become depraved or counterfeit or less than pure. Our thinking is off. So we're constantly living in a world where lies become normal to us. And so, I turn my eyes to Jesus. I let him tell me what is true and good for my life. And then I take small steps to get there, which is the battle. That's the life.
Yeah.
So this week, we're going to continue, and we're going to be looking at the rest of chapter 3, getting into a little bit of chapter 4, where Paul goes from the negative to the positive. He gives you the things that put to death. And then he says, now clothe yourself with these things, a whole different, what you'd look at as like the fruit of the Spirit and different things. And so that'll be kind of where we head this Sunday. And then we're going to wrap up this series in 2 weeks. Again, you'll be back for that one, looking forward to it. How he closes his letter by calling us to live lives of prayer and thanksgiving and how that sort of lands the plane. So it's going to be good, a lot happening. And what are you talking about, real quick, just like you're doing a whole different series for the youth called Lift Off.
That's right.
Just give me 1 minute of what are our students learning about right now?
Yeah, so they are taking a journey. So a while back, a guy by the name of George Barna came out with like the 10 stages of the Christian journey. And so a place where we're like far away from God in our experience to a place where we have profound love for God and one another. And so kind of what we're doing is we're matching that with the stages of a rocket's liftoff sequence. And so
Okay.
like, starting from just kind of being on ground, grounded, fueling up, all the way to where we're, lifted off in space and having, interstellar exploration kind of a thing.
Cool.
And so, yeah, that's kind of what we've been going through for this summer. And Caden actually just preached last night just about a life of faith and kind of what that looks like. And so, really looking forward to the rest of the summer and where this rocket takes us,
And
I
it
suppose.
ends with a big all-night event on the 28th of August.
Yeah,
I'm always
I think it's
hesitant
like,
to give dates on a
Yeah, I
podcast
know.
because you might be listening to this like 4 years from
Yeah.
now.
Maybe we'll get a cool like graphic that comes up with the correct date and time or something like that.
It's
But
coming. But
yeah.
if you are a student at Woodland, or you are more likely, or are you a parent who has a student, man, we just want to encourage you. Like, I want to tie this together a little bit. You as, I'll speak to the camera here. You as an adult, as the parent, understand the weight and the difficulty of trying to take those steps, become more like Jesus. And now you're also responsible for your kids doing it. Here's the deal. That's a big responsibility. It's part of parenting.
For sure.
But we're a community for a reason. And like we are, Woodland Church or any church is trying to partner with you as a parent. So when we offer things like our Sunday night youth service or different things, or even our whole kids ministry that happens in the mornings or different events or activities, it's not just because we feel good about having a bunch of kids show up because then look how big we are. We're here to partner with you in helping your children and youth and students take those steps closer to Jesus.
That's right.
So I always want to encourage you, if you are a parent, if you have a student or students in your lives, man, get them here, bring them, get them connected, have them come meet Mason, have them be a part of what we're doing on Sunday nights, and just, man, get them in community, get them meeting people and walking those steps to get closer to who Jesus is, to help them, put them in environments where their eyes are naturally being taken towards Jesus. That's one step you can take as a parent in what often feels like a very helpless, like, what do I do here? Man, let's just make sure they'll be a part of it. So, invitation, Mason's doing a great job. You want to be a part of it. And every Sunday night, it's going to be good. So, with that being said, Mason, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
This was great.
Good time.
Appreciate you and look forward to what God's going to do. And we'll see you guys next week on In the Woods, a Woodland Church podcast as we continue our study of Colossians together. See you then, everybody. Later.